All right, it's preseason magazine season, and Phil Steele has come out with his preview and predictions for the 2025 year. And what he had to say about South Carolina and each position unit on this upcoming team was shocking, to say the least. I tell you why, one of the best and most accurate preseason predictors every year, I think he's lost his damn mind. South Carolina is going to be just fine. Locked On Gamecocks starts right now.
You are Locked On Gamecocks, your daily podcast on the South Carolina Gamecocks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, guys? Welcome into Locked On Gamecocks. I'm your host, Chris Marler. I'm back for a Friday edition of the show, and I hope everyone's having a great start to their Friday, great start to their weekend, or whenever you're listening to this. Thank you for making Locked On Gamecocks your first listen each and every day. Shout out to our everydayers. Remember, we're a free and available podcast wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. And if you have not already signed up for FanDuel, now is as good of a time as ever because new customers can sign up and win $200 in bonus bets when their first $5 bet wins. Go to FanDuel.com to get started today. We're going to get started today with something I look forward to every year, preseason football magazine season. It's probably stupid. It's probably one of the dumbest annual traditions I feel like we have, but there's just something about like the lull of the off season. And then once June hits and walking into Lowe's or Bilo or Publix, seeing one of those Athlons or Lindy's or whatever on the newsstands. Phil Steele has been one of my favorites, and I'm sure a lot of y'all's as well, preseason magazines for years now, and one of the most accurate as well. Yesterday, I picked up his 2025 preview, and what he had to say about South Carolina was shocking to me. Not just because I think he's wrong, but because he's the only one that is saying he expects this team to take a giant step back, and especially from a talent standpoint, from position unit to position unit. We're going to get into that. It's going to be a good show. I'm very excited. We're going to open with the position unit rankings that he came out with. I even made a graphic to put on the show here so you guys could visually see it as well. So we're going to get into that, and then we're going to talk about the original plan for this episode before I got the magazine, which was there's two position units specifically on this team that I don't think are being talked enough about in regards to they could be the difference maker from a team going 9 wins like they did a year ago to being a college football playoff contender like South Carolina intends to be. All right. I know it's talking season and, we're still 70 days away from kickoff, but we're going to get into it either way. The position unit rankings from Phil Steele. The first thing I wanted to see when I got the magazine, which was 800 pages long, smallest print imaginable. Every page starts with multiple paragraphs about him telling you how accurate he has been year over year over year since he's been doing this. And I love it. It's still genuinely one of my favorite magazines and annual traditions to get. But I knew that Lenore Sellers was going to be in the quarterback room. We're going to be ranked pretty high, mainly because they had finally started getting recognized, not just because of Lenore's, but that entire group with Aaron Nolan, Cutter Woods, and what they've been able to put from a depth standpoint in place. It's finally being talked about as a top 10, sometimes top 5 quarterback room and position unit in the country, which is great. That's incredible, especially considering where that position had been in this program for the last 30, 35 years. So tremendous job there, and that's exactly what I expected to see. Then I kept going, and I wanted to see where they were ranked in his preseason rankings. Now, he does his top 40, which is not where he thinks each team should be ranked based off talent or going into the season. It's how he thinks they're going to finish. His power ratings talk about how good each team is and where he thinks they would rank just top to bottom going into 2025. South Carolina was 27th in the power ratings. Lower than we've seen everywhere else. I think every other magazine and preseason poll and all that kind of stuff, we've seen them in the top 15, which is what we expected to see going into this year with what you had returning. So lower than 15th, not even in the top 25. Where he had him ranked in his projected finish was 45th, and my jaw almost hit the floor. Then I made the mistake of going over to the position units because I don't think it's a secret that South Carolina has some talent to replace, especially on defense, and that's fine. But there's several places on this roster, and I feel like it's across the board. But there's several places on this roster where you look at like just the overall talent on the roster, the overall depth on the roster, and the quality of depth that has been built. I think it's the best and most talented roster that Beamer's had since he stepped foot on campus. I mean, and that's saying something considering how talented last year's team was. But I think top to bottom, because of some of the guys that we are still waiting in the wings that he got in the last 2 recruiting cycles that I think are going to be really good and just needed some time to develop before they get on the field. I think that this is the deepest this roster has been since he's been there, right? And there's several different position units where I think it's the deepest those positions have been, and important positions, the deepest they've been in maybe the last 10 years. So to say I was shocked is putting it mildly when Phil Steele threw these numbers out for the South Carolina position unit rankings. Let's add this graphic up here for you guys. Shocked. Just shocked. So for those of you not watching on YouTube and listening instead, I'll read them all for you. The 5th ranked quarterback position in the country, 47th for running back. Wide receiver was 45th. Offensive line, 69th. This is in the country, by the way, right? Defensive line, 35th. Linebacker, 59. Defensive back, this is the one that shocked me the most besides receiver, 33rd, and then special teams, 71. Listen, I like to give people the benefit of the doubt. It seems to be something that people refuse to do with Shane Beamer and the staff, but I like to give people the benefit of the doubt. And I also know that Phil Steele puts a ton of effort into this, and I'm sure he has some sort of reason and logic in his own mind of why this is justified. But it couldn't be more wrong. Like the defensive backs especially, think about the talent you have in that secondary, even with the loss of Eamon Worry, right? And then the one that stands out more than anything, and it's what we're going to get into more in depth in the second part of the show, but the receiver room, this is the deepest the receiver room has been in at least a decade, I think. Like, and I know that they had some good rooms and some really talented single players over the last 5-10 years. But from a standpoint of the entire position unit and every player involved and the depth that you brought in, I think it's I don't think it's even in question. It's the deepest of any position unit on the team, and it's the deepest they've had in my opinion, probably a decade. Like, you brought in what was arguably the best receiving class in the entire 2025 recruiting cycle. I think you had 5 total receivers, 4 of them were 4 stars or higher. You have Nick Harper coming back for his 3rd year, first year where he's only focused on football. He's a former 5-star, by the way. You return other very key guys. Mazio Bennett comes back. You have size finally. You've got some freak athletes. Like, you have dudes in that room now. And oh, by the way, you have one of the best quarterbacks in the country throwing to him. 45th in the country. Maybe where I should have been more shocked was where he has each unit ranked in the SEC. Because I've been wrong about stuff in the past, but I would bet any amount of money in the world that there are not 10 teams in this conference across the board that have a better position unit at every single position besides quarterback than South Carolina. What I mean by that is Phil Steele has Lenore Sellers in the quarterback position ranked number 1 in the SEC. It's tied for first, I think, with Texas. Or maybe it was LSU. Either way, tied for first. Every other position unit on this team going into 2025, he has ranked 10th or worse in the SEC. 10th or worse in the SEC. Running backs, 12th. Receivers, 12th. Offensive line, 14th. Defensive line, 11th. Linebackers, 14th. Defensive backs, 10th. Special teams, 11th. Special teams, I get. You lost Kai Kroger. You lost, I think they lost Herrera. Maybe I'm wrong about that. Either way, I get it. That's fine. There's 9 better secondaries in the SEC. The receiver one is the one that's most egregious because there's a lot of talent and there's a lot of talented units, not just individual players, but a lot of talented wide receiver units in this league specifically. There are not 11 better than South Carolina, point blank, period. Now, when we come back, I'm going to talk about why I think two of these that are being overlooked by Phil Steele and I guess others could not only be a big factor into the success of the 2025 season. I think it's going to be two of the most improved position units in the entire SEC, if not the country, when all is said and done at the end of the season. We'll talk about it when we come back. Locked on Gamecocks continues right after this. All right. Welcome back in. Before we get into my continued soapbox and rant about these unit rankings from Phil Steele, I want to tell you about our friends at FanDuel. And now is as good of a time as ever to sign up for FanDuel if you have not already. We have Game 7 in the NBA Finals coming up. We also have the College Baseball World Series out in Omaha. The championship series starts on Saturday. There's a lot of action going on as we count down to kickoff for college football season. And with the NBA Finals in full swing, every night delivers highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments, whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player. There's never been a better time to get in on the action than right now, and doing so with FanDuel. Listen, the MLB season is still just heating up, and every game brings clutch hits, standout pitching, and unforgettable moments, so make sure you are a part of the action as well. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and live with player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays. Fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. If you're new to FanDuel, it's the perfect time to sign up because head to FanDuel.com, place your first $5 bet, and if it wins, you will get $200 in free bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, let's get back into the show. And I'm glad that FanDuel is sponsoring today's episode. Because I'm not going to sit here and advocate that you guys get into betting or anything like that. But I would bet any amount of money that 7 of the 8 units on this team are not 10th or worse in this conference. The original plan for this episode was to go in and talk about 2 position units. I wrote an article over at LouisianaSports.net about 5 position units in the SEC that I think are poised to be the most improved in the conference. I talked about Auburn at receiver, LSU's secondary, Alabama's secondary, Missouri's front 7. And last but not least, and this is the one that I felt like was kind of a stretch, but I think it's going to be better. And it was the offensive line at South Carolina. And one of the reasons I think it could be one of the most improved is because, there's the bar is set pretty low. It's been one of the worst units in the country for 2 straight seasons. They've allowed 41 sacks in both of the last 2 seasons each. They have a lot of veteran experience they have to replace. But here's the thing I like about what they've built with this specific offensive line. I love what you have at tackle, right? I also love the fact that you went out. Like the plan seems to be, listen, we have 2 non-senior starters at each tackle position, right? One of them is a potential first-round pick in the 2027 draft. He's only a sophomore. Struggled a lot as a freshman, Josiah Thompson. Just struggled a lot as a freshman. But remember, when he came in, he wasn't ranked higher out of high school than Dylan Stewart, but he was the highest rated NIL valuation player on this entire team. Not Lenoris, not Kennard, not even Ward, none of them. It was him coming in. Like that's where his valuation was set coming into his college career, not just at South Carolina, but in general. So the upside that he has is obviously there, and a lot of freshmen struggle with that position, especially in the SEC. But going out and getting more veteran transfer portal players across the interior offensive line, like to replace what you basically did before at the same position, right? It was a bad unit last year. There were times where they were good. I think it was the A&M game. They didn't give up a single sack, which was shocking. That came out of nowhere. Because remember, against Oklahoma, when South Carolina got 9, Oklahoma got 7. And they struggled a lot throughout the season. But you lose 93.5% of the snaps taken between your 3 interior offensive linemen that left. the reason that number is so important, I think it stands out so much to me, that's why I bring it up a lot, is what that tells me more than anything is, especially with how bad that unit was, this coaching staff was not confident in whatever they had behind them. Because if they were, you would have seen someone else give it a chance to either step in, or they would have shuffled the line around, had other guys playing different positions, like to figure out not just the right starting five, but like the best starting five, regardless of position. So that never happened. I mean, 93.5% of your snaps gone when on a unit that was horrible at times last year. That's what that says to me. I think they take a big step forward this year. And I think part of it is the fact that this is the first time in a while where you have quality depth and really quality players at that position. And it's a cliche at this point, but everyone knows it. Like football, especially in this conference, are won in the trenches. Like these games are won in the trenches. And South Carolina has had a good defensive line and really good defensive line recruits for the last several years. I mean, even when they were really bad under Muschamp, they had some elite talent. Kinlaw obviously comes to mind. Jordan Burge, like from a recruiting standpoint. There's a 5-star that I'm forgetting in between those two. He transferred out. I think he went to Oregon. Maybe I'm wrong about that. Either way, but they had like good players on defense and on that side of the ball, on the defensive line consistently. That wasn't the issue. But offensive line, I remember when Spencer Rattler first stepped on campus when he came to South Carolina, this roster had 2 total offensive linemen that were ranked a 4-star or higher. And you could say positions like stars don't matter and all that kind of stuff. But everyone knows the more Jimmies and Joes that you have over X and O's, like that's what wins games. And if you're going to go out and recruit, you want as many 4-stars that might miss or might not end up playing up to their ranking as you can get, because there's still the hit rate on the blue chip players across the country is much higher than where the bust rate would be. And I say all that to say, for the first time in several years, at least since Shane Beamer's been on campus and been the head coach of this program, you actually have depth and a first and second string offensive line where you feel good about if someone goes down, if someone's not playing up to like where it's standard, if somebody's just playing really well and pushing for a starting job. You see that all the time. It's the first time that I feel like that is finally in play. And this offensive line, especially with Sean Elliott, I know he's a tight ends coach, but he will be able to help out in terms of like run game coordinator and all this kind of stuff of how to continue to improve. I think the turnaround that you're going to see from the offensive line this year is going to be much better. And the good news is you have one of the most elusive quarterbacks in the country behind you. So I think that they are going to be much better than they were a season ago. And again, the bar was set low. So they don't have to be the best offensive line in the country. They just have to not give up 41 sacks for the 3rd year in a row. The other unit, and it goes without saying, but the receiving core that South Carolina is going to have this year, I just think that people don't understand how good they're going to be. And I'll say this: the benefit of the doubt is rarely given to Shane Beamer. It's rarely given to this program. It's rarely given to its players. I feel like it's been the whole theme of most of the shows this week, to be honest. And I've somehow been just as surprised each day, despite it being the same theme. But Shane Beamer, it just is not given enough credit a lot of times for whatever reason. The receiving core that South Carolina has this year, this is the first time in a while where you have multiple guys that fit multiple different sizes, like profiles of like a receiver, skill possessions, possess skills, like all of those things. Where in the past, I remember saying this going into last year, who's going to be the guy at receiver? And we really didn't have one. It was Josh Simon at tight end is what it ended up being. But I said that because you didn't have a ton of known talent coming in at receiver, besides Harbor, who hadn't really, he'd scratched the surface maybe. But I felt confident in it because if there's one thing I knew about South Carolina football over the last 6, 8, 9 years, there's always been one guy, whether it's Josh Vann, right? Whether it's Xavier Legette, Debo Samuel, right? Like there's always been like one dude, and sometimes you've had multiple guys on that roster, but you've had one guy that has been like an all SEC caliber type player, had an all SEC caliber type season. I don't know if you have one of those on this roster, only because you have so much talent across the board. Nick Harbor, I think, is going to have a monster season. I really do. Like maybe that's just like well-wishing. I don't know. He did have a comment the other day about where he, like, this offseason, he's been able to actually focus on football, not do track, and learn the ins and outs of the game that he really just started playing like 4 or 5 years ago, especially at this position. Remember, like, going into even this offseason, there were still people who thought his biggest upside was to play defensive end. So the fact that he made a comment about how he now knows how to run every route in the route tree. Good. I mean, we were hoping that was going to happen a little bit sooner, but like, I just think that where he's going to progress, and then everything else they have around him, like and you don't just have the problem last year I kept harping on was you had some good players. You had some really good players that were good at the G5 level. You didn't have any size. You had one of the smallest groups of receivers in the entire country. Like, I think it was like 3 that were over 6 feet or over 6'1". That's not the same position like unit you're going to be looking at this year. A lot more size, a lot more speed, and across the board, just the floor has risen from where the talent is in that room. I think that this receiving room is going to be so deep, and there's so many people you can throw out there that can go out there and be like not just sure-handed elite athletes, but like really, really, really good all season long and give defensive backs fits. And now you have a quarterback who's going to be in the second year throwing to him as well. So I just, everything that I look at when I look at this team, and maybe this is, again, I don't feel like I'm being biased when I say this, but I know what you lost on defense. I also know what you have coming back. And that whole benefit of the doubt thing that we keep talking about, at some point, the track record has to be brought into play when you talk about this program, this defense with Clayton White, and this coach with Shane Beamer. Because we talk about how great Kirby is all the time. We talk about how great Steve Sarkisian is all the time. And they are good. They are really good head coaches. With what he walked into, coming off a 2-10 season, the fan base was miserable. The roster was terrible. You had like the 78th ranked recruiting class, like coming into, like that's what he walked into to start the job. And now you're talking about not just a team that was like in national conversation to make the playoff, but also starting there again and like with expectations that are as high as ever in this program and at least the highest in the last decade, but also what he's done from a recruiting standpoint, like the talent up and down this roster, like it is the first time since the 2011 to 2013 years that we have talked about South Carolina in the same breath as some of the other top 15, top 10 programs around the country in terms of talent. Like, I mean, like it's the first time that they have actually been in those conversations, and they've done it everywhere you can go. High school, transfer portal, JUCO, like it's been tremendous. And I don't know why it's so difficult to give this man his flowers, but people just continue to I don't think it's even a disrespect thing. I think it's just they just dismiss what Beamer has done and what he's going to do this year too. I just, anyway, when we come back, I'm going to say one more thing and tell you about the rest of some of Phil Steele's predictions for this team and where he thinks they're headed in the 2025 season. Locked On Gamecocks continues after this. All right. I appreciate you guys joining us today. Hope the graphic was helpful. We're gonna bump it up a notch in the fall this year. We're gonna get some new equipment. Probably gonna get like an actual background. I don't know, maybe some lights so it's not just half my face being lit up. We're gonna really do it big this fall. I'm excited. It's gonna be a great season. So here's what we're gonna finish with today, and I again, like I love Phil Steele, and I know that he probably has reasons why he like feels justified in where he has South Carolina. And it's also just his opinion, and it's fodder that we can talk about until kickoff. So it's nothing against him. But here's the rest of where he has South Carolina ranked, and I'm going to tell you this in comparison to the other places, because that's like the biggest shock to me. Like if he would have had him at 25. Yeah, okay. I mean, I can see that. It's a tough schedule. Like they did lose a lot to the NFL. But Phil Steele's power ratings, which is where he thinks every team is ranked based off of talent going into the season and if they all played each other, 27th. That still feels low. And in comparison, like Athlon and Lindy's, and I told you this like at the end of last season, almost every single, whether it be like media platform, preseason prediction magazine, whatever else, it was going to have South Carolina in the top 15, some in the top 10. And we've seen that happen almost across the board. Athlon had him 12th, 6th in the SEC. Lindy's had him 13th, 6th in the SEC. Phil Steele, 27th in his power ratings. In his actual rankings, which is where he thinks each team will finish based on a whole bunch of different things and factors that he thinks will come into play throughout the season. So where he thinks they'll finish, 45th. 45th and 10th in the SEC. I just would be shocked. I would be shocked. If they lost to Clemson, I would not be shocked. Clemson, I hate to say it, and you're going to hear me say it more as we get closer to the season, not on this show, but like in general, but like Clemson is going to be one of the best teams in the country this year, and it sucks, but they are going to be one of the best teams in the country. So if you lost them, I can get it. If you lost at LSU, in Death Valley, on the road, I get it. I could see those two things happening. If you don't beat Bama at home, I could see that. Sure. Those are all plausible things. A&M, you've struggled mightily with them almost every year you played them over the last 10, 11, 12 years. I get that. But 45th in the country, no. Just no. 10th in the SEC, no, I don't see that happening. But that's just my opinion. He did have this to say as well. He has them because of their schedule. It's the South Carolina has the fourth hardest schedule in the country going into this year. The ninth highest opponents winning percentage from last year. 10 of the 12 opponents they'll face this year made a bowl game last year, which is, that's a lot. And then also they were 12th in his teams going down this year based off of talent lost to the portal or the NFL. In this case, the NFL. And it says they have an 88% chance of less wins. Maybe he's right. I don't know. But even if you lost one more game, 45th in the country does not feel accurate at all. The last thing I'll tell you is this. This is the biggest shock, I think, from all of this too, is I went back and looked at where he had the position rankings this year versus last year, because across the board this year, it was like there was only 2 in the top 35. That's insane. Last year, which in my opinion, especially on offense, was a much less talented team. He had the receivers ranked 9th, which is 3 spots higher than this year. The offensive line was ranked 13th, 1 spot higher than this year. Defensive line was 7th, 4 spots higher. Linebacker was 6th, 8 spots higher. And I actually am fine with that. That's fine. Going into the season, you cannot sit here and say that South Carolina has one of the best linebacking groups coming into the year because we haven't seen any of them play yet. By the end of the year, I think that's going to be very different. And again, Clayton White has shown you that year in and year out. Secondary last year was 5th. This year's 10th, whatever. But here's where I find my solace and find comfort in my disagreement. The very last one was this. Quarterback room going into the 2024 season with Lenore Sellers. He had them ranked 11th in the conference and 57th in the country. Now this year, he has them 1st in the conference and 5th in the country. So just like last year, I think this team is going to prove him wrong in several different ways. So that is all for today's episode. I hope you guys enjoyed it. We'll be back either tomorrow or Sunday with our next episode. And tell us in the comments, like I said, it's preseason magazine season, it's talking season. What would you like to discuss? Throw out some questions, topic ideas, whatever you guys want. And we will address all of them and talk about them as we count down 70 more days till kickoff. Appreciate you guys. Go Cox.